So for today's deep dive, we're looking at what feels like a fundamental paradox of the modern internet.
Mm,
We're all, deeply connected. And yet, so many of our online town squares, I'm thinking of the big social media platforms,
hmm
they just feel less like communities.
And more like engines for division.
Exactly. Why is that? Why do some digital spaces foster genuine connection, real community resilience, while others just seem to accelerate polarization and build these toxic echo chambers?
It is, I think, the essential question of our time, because when that polarization happens, it's often just, shrugged off as inevitable.
Right. It's just human nature.
It's just human nature expressing itself online. But today we're looking at this really fascinating, almost low-tech counterexample that suggests something else. It suggests the architecture of the platform, the deliberate choices made by its designers, that's the primary driver of the outcome.
So our mission here is to unpack the source material. We're looking at a case study developed by Dr. Shalini Mishra, focusing on a platform called Front Porch Forum, or FPF. And this is a genuinely unique, sort of hyper-local platform that really thrives by doing pretty much the opposite of all the Silicon Valley dogma.
We're going to dissect its fundamental design choices. I mean, everything from their business model to their approach to identity, content moderation, and show exactly how those, I guess, quirky, low-tech choices lead to vastly different civic and social outcomes compared to what we see on big tech.
And ultimately, we want you to decide, is polarization just an intrinsic feature of how we communicate, or is it merely a consequence of platform design?
To really understand this platform, you have to go back to its origin story.
Yeah, which feels genuinely analog. I mean, almost prehistoric in internet terms.
It does. FPF started way back in the year 2000 in Burlington, Vermont. Michael Wood Lewis and his wife, Valerie, they'd moved their young family to this neighborhood called the Five Sisters.
And they had this feeling, right? They said they lived in a terrific neighborhood, but they still felt this frustrating lack of real, tangible community connection.
So instead of, waiting for some high-tech solution or raising venture capital, they went completely back to basics.
They literally went door to door.
Door to door in their neighborhood, gathering email addresses to create a simple listserv with about 500 households.
Wow.
And the goal was so focused, so simple. Just stimulate these low-stakes exchanges about everyday local life.
Mm.
And crucially, to act as a catalyst for people to get actively involved in real life, the tech was just the starting line.
Not the finish line. And that hyper-local focus is absolutely foundational to what FPF is today. By 2022, it had expanded, and pretty successfully.
Mm-hmm.
It's now active in every single community in Vermont, and even stretches into parts of surrounding states like New York, New Hampshire.
But it's remained strictly hyperlocal. Participation is only open to people who actually live there, and it's defined by these really small geographic boundaries.
That scale constraint is so important.
It's crucial. Most towns in Vermont might only have, 1,000 households or so?
Yeah.
And the average FTF forum has about 750 participants.
So it's intentionally capped.
It's an intentional cap that keeps the environment feeling small-scale, neighborhood-centric, and focused on people you might actually run into at the local market.
And the types of things people use it for, it really shows the kind of social capital this structure creates. You see everything from someone trying to find a vetted babysitter, organizing a block party, or
Gathering volunteers for a park cleanup?
right, or asking for local contractor recommendations, or finding a lost pet, all that stuff.
And this is where it's so profoundly different from a generalized platform. Because the audience is your actual neighbor, the stakes are just different. The source material notes that FPF hosts discussions on political issues across the spectrum.
And the discourse stays civil.
It stays civil and constructive. When a platform is designed to help you ask your neighbor for help during an emergency, it just builds this foundational trust that translates into better civic dialogue.
Okay, let's pivot to the design infrastructure, because this is where the divergence from big tech really starts. FPF is a for-profit entity, a public benefit corporation incorporated in Vermont since 2006.
And that term, public benefit corporation, is really important for you to note. It's crucial. It means that while FPF, yes, needs to generate profit to survive, its legal charter explicitly prioritizes its community mission and its civic values right alongside profit.
Which is not the case for a standard, purely for-profit corporation.
Not at all. And that legal structure, that's what allows them to make choices that would be considered, frankly, financially irrational in Silicon Valley.
Like their business model, it completely avoids what we now call surveillance capitalism.
Right. They make money by selling ad space, but only to local neighborhood businesses, your dentist, your hardware store.
They also offer subscriptions to local politicians who want to reach their constituents directly.
But the absolutely crucial difference here is what they don't do. FPF does not sell member email addresses to third parties. They don't surveil users' online behavior and then use that data to algorithmically control the content you see.
So the platform isn't driven by the attention economy.
No, its engine is pure service to that hyperlocal community.
And because they aren't driven by that need to capture your attention every single second, they can afford to operate on a totally different clock speed. This is their unique, slow drip model.
Which is radical. They reject the instantaneous, high-pressure, threaded posts and comments that, every other major platform relies on.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, all the posts that get submitted are gathered up and distributed just once a day in an email newsletter. You don't get 50 alerts, you get one digest.
One. I love this analogy from the co-founder, Michael Wood Lewis. He said a local gardener once described their posts as slow drip irrigation posts compared to the fire hose of so much of the rest of the internet.
It's a perfect illustration of the intentionality. If you want to respond to a post, say you're offering help or debating a town issue, you either email the author directly or you submit your response for publication in the next day's newsletter.
So there's this forced lag. It creates a buffer.
Demanding reflection instead of just reaction. Wood Lewis admitted their design choice is intentional. He said, "We actually want people to spend less time online," which, as he says, is blasphemy in Silicon Valley.
The platform is just a catalyst. The real action, the community, that happens when you turn off the screen.
Exactly.
And that focus on slowing things down is, I think, fundamentally linked to the civility the platform maintains.
For sure. And it's reinforced by FPF's commitment to, 1, human content moderation, and 2, verifiable identity.
Let's talk about the resources they put into that.
Okay, look at this. Out of their small team of 20 employees, and that covers everything, IT, business, all of it, 10 of them are dedicated full-time online community managers.
10. Half their staff.
Half the staff is just dedicated to quality control.
So these are 10 people whose job is not to build a better algorithm, but just to review posts.
They review every single submission before it's published. They make sure it upholds the terms of use, which have strict rules against things like hate speech, violence, and disinformation.
So what happens if a post does violate those terms? Say it's some false conspiracy theory about an election.
The managers bounce it back to the user. And they send a specific human explanation of why it wasn't accepted and how they could rephrase it to be more productive. It's the anti-algorithm. It's accountability and education, not some invisible shadow ban.
I have to ask, this dedication to human review, 10 people looking at every post, it sounds brilliant for keeping local discourse healthy. But is that scalable outside of a small state?
That is the right question.
And who gets to arbitrate what counts as disinformation without risking the platform becoming, overly paternalistic?
Right, and the source material provides the answer by looking at that small hyperlocal context. Because the community size is so constrained, the human review system is actually highly efficient. The managers, they get to know the community, its baseline discourse.
Okay.
And secondly, the arbitration is enforced by the identity requirement. This is the platform's secret weapon.
The identity requirement is where it gets truly unique. You have to sign up using your real name, your complete street address, your mailing address, and when a post is published, it includes your name and your street name.
Exactly. That lack of anonymity in a hyperlocal setting just fundamentally changes how people engage. The person posting is your neighbor, the one you might wave to or see at the convenience store.
And FPF has a zero-tolerance policy for hate and for specific forms of disinformation. They list false claims about COVID-19, the 2020 presidential election, racial justice incidents.
And that combination, the human moderation plus the real name policy, it acts as this powerful deterrent against the kind of performative outrage that anonymity just fuels online.
So we've seen how FPF's design can enforce civility. But what happens when platform design actively rewards the opposite? Let's zoom out to the architecture of polarization on the big platforms.
Yeah, the contrast is stark. And the consequences of those big tech design choices are clearly measurable. This proves that design is, deterministic. We've got some fascinating data here from a 2020 study by Kitchens, Johnson, and Gray.
What do they do?
They tracked the web browsing history of 200,000 U.S. adults over 4 years, and they cross-referenced their social media use with their visits to news sites.
And what's so fascinating is that just being connected isn't the problem. Both Facebook and Reddit were shown to expose users to a wider range of news sources than those users would typically seek out on their own.
But, and this is huge, but the downside is dramatic. And it comes down entirely to the mechanism of delivery. The researchers found that the more time people spent on Facebook, the more partisan their news consumption became. And get the staggering finding. The polarizing impact of Facebook on news consumption was five-fold higher for conservatives compared to people who identified as liberals.
A five-fold difference. That's huge. Why
Yeah.
such a partisan disparity there?
The study attributes it directly to the algorithm prioritizing intense engagement. Facebook's algorithm is designed to keep you scrolling, right? And it knows that strong emotional reactions, anger, outrage, fear, are the best fuel for that feedback loop. And since Facebook's design relies on your social graph, connecting you to people you already know, it often just reinforces your existing views.
So when those familiar people share intense, partisan content, the algorithm boosts it because those reactions drive clicks and comments.
Exactly. It pushes users toward the extremes that are guaranteed to generate maximum engagement.
So if the design prioritizes conflict, users become more partisan. But if we look at the contrast in that same study Reddit, we see a totally different outcome.
A completely different outcome. Reddit is organized around topic-based communities, which are often nonpartisan, and it prioritizes content based on user votes for what is informative or relevant.
Not highly emotional engagement signals like likes and angry faces.
Right. The design encourages discernment over reaction, and the result. Both conservatives and liberals on Reddit consumed 50% more moderate news sources. The comparison just makes the design argument inescapable.
So what does all this mean for community resilience? FPF's design, hyperlocal, low anonymity, human-moderated, slow. It results in the inverse of this polarization. It creates powerful social capital.
Wood Lewis compares FPF to a vibrant local newspaper hub, something that strengthens local institutions and mutual trust.
And that resilience was really put to the test during the COVID-19 pandemic.
It was. The FPF platform became this indispensable form of digital public infrastructure. It supported everything from shopping services for quarantine neighbors to addressing localized food insecurity, organizing childcare during online schooling.
And the posts that are documented in the source material, they just bring this level of trust to life. You see Susanna in Lincoln offering to shop for her grandmother in Maryland, but then realizing she could better help a neighbor right there in Lincoln instead.
Or Bill in Burlington offering toilet paper to self-isolating residents because, as he says, that appears to be what stores are out of most.
And Kathy in Colchester, expressing this deep gratitude after the forum, connected her with an angel who was willing to pick up my prescriptions every 28 days. I mean, this is practical, life-sustaining infrastructure built entirely on trust.
Trust cultivated by design.
Exactly. We've seen FPF function as a real civic space, which elevates it beyond just a local bulletin board. It connects it directly to this idea of a digital public infrastructure, which is championed by figures like Ethan Zuckerman.
Right, and that concept defines online spaces that are built intentionally around core civic values. They're designed to encourage thoughtful, even challenging dialogue, not just the comfortable reinforcement of your existing views.
And because big tech has, frankly, repeatedly failed to create this kind of civic space, alternatives are being proposed at a very high level. Francis Fukuyama and others have proposed what they call middleware software.
So basically layers of code that let people choose different algorithms, one that prioritize content based on criteria like, say, sites with high editorial standards rather than just popularity or intensity.
Or we're seeing ideas floated by current tech CEOs suggesting users should be able to create or select their own algorithms to curate their feed.
But FPF is the living, breathing proof that these alternative models are possible right now. Wood Lewis has made it clear he has no ambition of being the next Silicon Valley tech unicorn. His ambition is just to demonstrate that a fundamentally different and healthier way of interacting with each other online is achievable.
I think the final synthesis here is impossible to ignore. The choice of communication pace, the content moderation strategy, and the requirement of real identity. These things radically shape civic discourse, and they strengthen community resilience. The design of our online institutions plays a critical, deterministic role in shaping our behavior.
Just like the physical design of our libraries and parks and schools do in the real world.
Yes.
We so often equate the simple act of connecting people online with being intrinsically good. But if you look at the polarizing effects of this constant in-your-face awareness of clashing sensibilities, which is often what big tech delivers, we have to ask a hard question. Would a certain amount of benign neglect or even intentional ignorance of other people's views actually be more conducive to social peace than constant connectivity?
That is a profound question. What, for you, listening right now, qualifies as a truly meaningful relationship or a truly resilient community? And how does the specific design of the platform you choose to use, whether it's fast or slow, anonymous or real name, how does that help or hinder your ability to build that structure?
The takeaway here is that we can demand different designs because the tools we use are never neutral. Their architecture shapes our society.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.